Okay, so here we are in notes part 2 of the first set of notes. There's a second set that's going to be relatively short that comes after these 3 parts. And that's enzymes, but we won't talk about that right now. So chitin. Chitin is similar structure to cellulose. So if you remember what cellulose is, and you should because you looked over your notes, cellulose was those glucose molecules that made a sheet. So a chain on top of a chain on top of a chain on top of a chain, making like a sheet that makes wood strong and plants strong, okay? Well, chitin is very similar, but chitin is in animals, not plants. It's the exoskeletons of arthropods. Move this up here somewhere. And like arthropods like lobsters and roly-poly bugs. They're also called terrestrial isopods. That's their scientific name. And also the cell walls of fungi, funguses. And not just mushrooms, but all different kinds of fungi, okay? And chitin, you can see, is very similar. It's glucose, it's glucose molecules, but it's arranged in a little bit different pattern. Like the oxygen is connected crossways here. So it's almost like a chain link type of connection, which makes, you know, the shells of crabs and things like that very hard to crack. So here is one that is in the classroom. See this guy? This is a typical kind of spider. No, I don't think it's a spider crab. I don't know what this is. Anyway, it's a crab. So his outer shell is made of chitin, and it's the whole thing, all of these things. If you've ever eaten crab at the restaurant, you know, lobster, you crack that, and you're cracking chitin. Or you ever step on a bug and you hear that crunching sound, that's the chitin cracking, just like if you were to step on a branch, okay? You would get a similar snap. All right, so now it is time to test yourself. So you will see here lots of fill-ins. Okay, so you're going to fill in the carbohydrate, what elements, what its uses are, food examples, what kind of foods you can find carbohydrates in, and molecule examples, chitin being one of them, which we just discussed. So this is kind of summing up the whole carbohydrate thing, and then you're going to answer the rest of those questions on your own. And this is another slide of the same thing, testing yourself for carbohydrates. And it's slide 33, so just make sure you know that you have to come back to this when we're done. Or at a later time, like this evening, which would be a perfect time to do it. So now we're in the subunit called, that has to do with fats and lipids. Well, fats and lipids, okay? And the subunit is fat. So fats and lipids are fats, oils, and waxes. And the subunit is 3 fatty acid tails. So it looks like this with a glycerol on the end. So my hand would be the end, okay? And then they would have 3 of these tails made out of rows and chains of hydrocarbons, like from the last set of notes. So just like here. Okay, so chains and chains, these are the 3 tails, and these are the glycerol ends, okay? And obviously the uses are for long-term energy. Fat is a human storage molecule. That's why, or not just humans, but animals in general. That's why squirrels and other bears and things like that hibernate for the winter, they will store up fat, so when they go to sleep for several months, their body can use that fat as long-term energy, okay? Short-term, remember, was carbohydrates. Short-term, rapid, fast, okay? And it's in the cell membranes of cells, obviously, all cells, plant and animal cells. But plants also have a cell wall. All living organisms, insulation, like for blubber in a whale, or in people too, I guess. Cushioning, waterproofing. So, did you ever hear the term, oh, it's like water off of a duck's back? Well, ducks have an oil gland right beneath their tail that they rub with their beak, and then they preen their feathers with that oil so that they can float in the water, and they get rained on and they don't get wet. The water just runs right off of them. Other birds that don't have those glands have to dry out after they get wet. Cholesterol and steroids, we'll talk about what those are later. And of course, things like butter, and there's fat and meats, and there's oils. Plants have oils like peanut oil and vegetable oil and corn oil. Those are all fats, okay? And they're all made out of this glycerol with the 3 fatty acids, the 3 fatty acid tails. So lipids are nonpolar, and what's water? Polar, right? So that's why oil and water don't mix. You can shake it up like this, but what's going to happen? The oil is going to float to the top because it's less dense, and the water will go to the bottom. That's why you have to shake up your Italian salad dressing before you put it on your salad. So they're not going to dissolve in water. They stay separated. Lipid molecules have a higher ratio of hydrogen atoms to oxygen atoms than carbohydrates. Remember, carbohydrates was 2 to 1, so there's going to be a much larger ratio here. See, there's a lot more hydrogens than oxygens. A lot more. And of course, lipids store energy very efficiently. They have large amounts of these CH bonds, these carbon-hydrogen bonds, hydrocarbons. Each one is a hydrocarbon, each little unit of that. And they store a lot of energy in those bonds. So you have to break those bonds down, and it would release more energy. So that's why fat is long-term. So what are fatty acids? So fatty acids are unbalanced carbon chains that make up most lipids. The 2 ends, the head and the tail, of a fatty acid molecule, that's a typo, have different properties. That's probably in your notes too then. Structure of the fatty acid. So here it is. You have to finish this in your notes. I provided you the center part, and you have to finish it, okay? So here's the butyric acid. This whole thing is called butyric acid. So you have to write the name and the formula, CH3, parentheses, CH2, parentheses, COOH, and you have to finish this structure, okay? This is the chemical structure of one fatty acid. They don't all look like this. They're similar to this. And remember, the chains go much farther out. And this is, yeah. So 2 ends, a head and a tail. That's all, okay? So you would need 3 of those together to get your lipid. So obviously we're finishing drawing that in our notes. And if you don't finish right now when I change the slide, you should be finished by now because it's just a few letters and lines. Go back to this and finish it, or copy from somebody at your table who did finish, okay? So, lipids have 2 ends that have different properties. So, here's your fatty acid, okay? And it's got the carboxyl end, which I told you I would talk to you about more in the last set of notes, of the fatty acid molecule, and that's polar. So it's attracted to water. Remember, like dissolves like. So the polarity of this end, this carboxyl end, is going to be attracted to water. It is, and it's said to be hydrophilic, water loving. Hydrophilic means water, hydrophilic, from the Greek, loving, okay? So if one side is hydrophilic, the other side is going to be hydrophobic, the nonpolar side, the tail end. So these tails are hydrophobic and these heads are hydrophilic. So this is what happens in a cell. We're going to learn a lot more about this when we learn about cellular biology, but so imagine one cell of your body, just one of these skin cells, or a brain cell, or a cell in your stomach, whatever, okay? It's your body. It's one of your cells. Well, that cell is like a round little blob, right? What makes it round, what makes it this shape, are these tails and heads, these lipids. And you've got one layer here on the outside of the cell, and you've got one layer here on the inside of the cell, and that's called a lipid bilayer. Lipid, because it's made out of these molecules, okay, these fatty acid molecules, and it's got two layers, so it's a bilayer, lipid bilayer. It's kind of simple, actually. And this is what your cell membranes of all of your cells are made out of, this. And it's a little more complicated than that. There's some other things in there, but this is pretty much the main gist. And the hydrophobic tails touch each other, like this, away from the water that's on the outside of the cell or water that's on the inside of the cell. They arrange themselves this way and they stay that way. Everything's a molecule. Every molecule is an atom. So this is nature. This is nature. This is biochemistry. A cell is the smallest unit of life. We haven't really covered that yet, but we will. And cells are made up of chemicals. That's chemical. Pretty cool. So what's the difference between saturated and unsaturated fats? One may sound worse than the other, but because it's saturated, this is saturated with fat. That's different, okay? Like if you get some greasy pizza or greasy French fries, right? And you're like, oh, this is just saturated with fat. And you put a towel on it and soak up the oil, and it's pretty gross. So it's not quite what it means. The saturated and unsaturated is referring to hydrogen atoms. So let's take a look, okay? So saturated fatty acids contain single bonds between all of their carbon atoms. And you can see that all of the carbons are totally full, saturated, like a sponge, a dripping sponge, it's saturated, totally full and can't hold any more hydrogens. That's what saturated means. And saturated fats are usually solid at room temperature. So, animal fat, margarine, those kinds of things, okay? And they mostly come from animal products. Saturated fats raise your bad cholesterol levels in the blood and can lead to heart disease. So, fat you find in animal things, the oil in the fried chips of this kind, okay? And others, I'm being very general because it's not just Lay's Classic, it's all of them, all right? Unless they're baked. Baked doesn't have nearly as amount of fat in it. Excuse me, and milk. Milk, you're like, what do you mean? You said they're solid at room temperature. Have you ever left a glass of milk out and see what happens to it? At room temperature, it starts to solidify in the glass if it's been out for a while. But in the fridge, it's cool, so All right, and foods with saturated fats. Meats, milk products, processed foods. So that's what I just said. Meats, milk products, processed foods. So that's saturated. Again, saturated, lots of hydrogens, no double bonds. Now here, unsaturated, see this? What happened? These they're not full of hydrogens anymore, but they still have to make that special bond that keeps them stable with the 8 electrons, right? So they had to make a double bond. And so those double bonds between the carbon atoms causes the tail to have a kink in it. And that prevents solidification at room temperature. That kink is what makes it a liquid at room temperature. So pretty much any oil, okay, be it from an avocado or olive oil, grapeseed oil, a lot of those vegetable oils are going to have to be liquids because they are unsaturated. So they are better for you, but they're still fat. All right? Referred to as oils, so that unsaturated fats do not raise the bad cholesterol and are beneficial. See this? In moderation. You can't just like pour oil, cook everything in olive oil. It's still not going to be good for you. It's better, although it's better than cooking everything in butter and in lard, which is pig fat. So foods with unsaturated fats, like I said, olive oil, canola, and most vegetable oils, nuts and fish. Fish also have omega-3 fatty acids that are associated with decreased risk of heart disease and preventing memory loss with old age. So knowing this stuff can make you a healthier person. Very important. Knowing the difference between these saturated and unsaturated fats. And then there's polyunsaturated fats. What does poly mean again? It means many, right? So that means there's many double bonds. And so here's what a polyunsaturated fat molecule, lipid, would look like, okay? Or fatty acid. So multiple, 1, 2, 3, here. All these hydrogens are gone, so it's unsaturated, poly, many times over. Light, transparent oils from plants and fish. So they're found in walnuts and sunflower seeds, all kinds of seeds. Fish, again, something called ground flax seed that's ground up. I use it every day in my morning protein shake. Flax seed and chia seeds also. Chia seeds, you can buy all this stuff in Publix and in Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and all places like that. Trans fat. Trans fat is formed when liquid oils are changed into solid fats by adding hydrogen, known as hydrogenation. And this is a man-made procedure that converts the liquids into solids, okay? So foods with trans fats are vegetable shortening, like Crisco. It comes in a can usually, and you scoop it out and you mix it in with cookies. You pretty much bake with Crisco. I don't like the taste of it, but some people do. Margarine, again, I told you that vegetable oils were liquid, but what they're doing is they're hydrogenating it. So they're adding hydrogens to turn that kink back straight again, so it's a solid at room temperature. So it's a vegetable oil that's solidified. Hydrogenated vegetable oil, it's called. Cookies like Oreos, deep fried foods, and snack foods. So you see you got low trans fat, vegetable oil, and then going up. This is soft margarine in the tub. This is stick margarine, in the little aluminum foil packets. You guys all know this stuff. You eat food, right? And then the shortening is that nasty Crisco, the white stuff in the jar. I don't like that stuff. So as the product gets more solid, the trans fat goes up. This raises your bad cholesterol, which is low-density lipids, and lowers the high-density lipids, the good cholesterol. So they force them to become saturated with hydrogen atoms. And then arranges the fats in such a way to prevent our body, the enzymes, which we're going to learn about next week, I think, the little molecules that help break down things in your body, okay, from breaking it down. So it kind of passes right through you. So when you eat some of this stuff, it might upset your tummy, or too much of it, you might have some problems in the bathroom, okay? So just got to be careful with what you're eating and how much you're eating, okay? All right. So we're on slide 42, and what we see here is 4 classes of lipids that are important to living things. So we have 3 of them that we're going to talk about at first. They're the triglycerides, the phospholipids, and waxes. I'm going to talk about each of them here. And then the 4th one we'll get into in a little while, okay? So the triglycerides are composed of 3 molecules of fatty acids joined to 1 molecule of glycerol, okay? So if you look here, you've got the 1, 2, 3 fatty acids with the hydrocarbon chains going out this way, and the different ends, the different carboxyl ends, okay? They come together with 1 glycerol, and that yields or equals this triglyceride. 1, 2, 3 glyceride, okay? And 3 waters. So this is also a dehydration synthesis. Anything where water comes out is a dehydration chemical reaction. So 3 fatty acids, 1, 2, 3, the 1 glycerol, make sure you label this in your notes. You get your triglyceride and your water, 3 water molecules this time. Because you have 3 fatty acids, all right? I know, it's a lot of information. It's a lot of new words, but that's why I make guided notes for you, so you can always look back at it, okay? If you don't look back at these, what you're writing down right now, all this stuff you're writing down right now is going to be wasted time. Just wasted time. Because it's a classwork grade, what you're doing right now. But to read it is to get that test grade, that good test grade. And tests are worth a lot more than classworks, right? Okay. Just trying to show you the logic behind what I'm telling you to do. All right, so there are, the second one is phospholipids. Now, phospholipids, these are the ones that form the cell membranes, okay? And they have that hydrophilic head and the hydrophobic tail. So these are the heads and these are the tails, and that makes your lipid bilayer, your phospholipid bilayer. So cell membranes composed of 2 layers of phospholipids called a lipid bilayer. But now we're going to say phospholipid bilayer, because there's a phosphate group in there as well. Phosphate is phosphorus, P on the periodic table of elements. And that forms the barrier, like I said before, for the inside of the cell in here versus the outside of the cell, and protecting all of the things that are going on inside the cell. Now, all of our cells, they work together in combination, right? But some are microscopic single-celled organisms, and they don't have other cells of their kind to protect them like we do. They're all on their own, and they're out there in ponds and rivers and lakes and puddles and in the ocean, living just by themselves. And what they have inside, okay, is everything they've got. And what they have outside is the world, you know? And the only thing protecting them is a lipid bilayer, phospholipid bilayer. Lets some things in, doesn't let other things in. All right, and the third one is wax. So this is the third of 4. Wax consists of very long fatty acid chain joined to a long alcohol chain. And the waxes are highly waterproof. Now, in plants and animals, they provide protective coatings. For example, your earwax prevents microorganisms from entering your ear, okay? So, ew, yuck, earwax, but you have beeswax to make candles, and there's something in a sperm whale, this is a sperm whale, something in the head of the sperm whale that enables them to shoot out echolocation sound waves to hunt their prey in the deep, dark sea, called spermaceti. That's why they're called sperm whales, because believe it or not, that stuff looks like sperm. Okay, it looks like white and gelatinous and nasty looking. So that's why they're called that. But it's very waxy material. Steroids. Number 4, this is the 4th one, okay? So steroids are not composed of fatty acids, but they are composed of 4. Whoa, went too far with that. Actually, it's gone. It's gone. Okay. Various functional groups attached to them. So 4, they're just ring molecules. Just put ring molecules for that, okay? So 4 ringed molecules. We don't have to know what they are. It's okay. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 with various groups attached to them. So here you have a hydroxyl group, here you have a methyl group, another methyl group, and some group that I don't know the name of that. So, and that's cholesterol. So cholesterol is an example of a steroid. And they make human hormones, okay, including testosterone in males. And again, one of the most familiar ones is this one, cholesterol, which is needed for nerve cells and other cells to function normally, okay? Now, too much cholesterol obviously is bad. So it's a component of cell membranes. Then there's cortisol, which is also a steroid. It's a stress hormone. Cortisol kind of is like adrenaline. When you get an adrenaline rush, you also get a cortisol rush, which does similar but different things in your body, okay? To that fight or flight when there's danger, that reaction to something happening. Are you going to stay and fight, or are you going to run away? Fight or flight. Vitamins A, E, and D, and K are fat soluble. Fats are needed to make these hormones. So steroids are, including cholesterol and testosterone, are very important, but not these kind of steroids. Not the ones that you shoot up in your arm or leg or wherever and to improve your physical performance, okay? This is what gets people, banned from the Olympics and does a lot of bad things to your life and your body because people feel like they want to get big fast, and so they do these horrible things, and the side effects are they're far worse than the benefits, okay? You may see some of these guys who cheated to look like this, but they suffer many things that you can't even see. So liver tumors, fluid retention, they get cancer, kidney tumors, high blood pressure, acne, okay? Not just on your face, but other parts of your body. Something called jaundice, trembling, heart disease, growth. Your growth is halted, your growth is stunted. That's why you see some of these big dudes and they're short because they started taking steroids when they were in high school or like early high school, and they stunted their growth. Shrinking testicles, yeah, that would pretty much prevent most people from even thinking about that. And in women, they'll grow facial hair from taking this stuff. So, not wise, okay? So it's time to test yourself in your notes. I'm not going to show you these. After these notes are done, you are going to do this, you know how it works, okay? All right, and it continues on slide 48. You have to identify the following molecules using these terms here that we just went over, and you're just going to label them on your in your notes, okay? And finally, part 4, the proteins. We're on slide 49. So this is an example of a protein, but you can get protein, chicken, okay, or eggs, but you can get protein from all of these things and much more. So hummus is ground up chickpeas, which is just beans, really. Bread, some breads are better than others. Fresh whole grain bread is much better than bleached flour white bread, which is not really good for you. Beans, nuts and seeds, and then of course all of your meat and dairy products. So proteins are used in lots of structures. They're organic compounds, obviously, composed mainly of these 4. Remember, now we're at the full chon or hunk of the 4 main elements that we talked about. We hadn't talked about nitrogen yet because that doesn't take place in fatty acids or in carbohydrates, okay? But it does take place in, take a role in proteins. All foods contain protein unless it is only sugar or fat, which is like kind of what I just said. Proteins are the most abundant type of organic compound and are involved in nearly every chemical reaction in the body. So virtually every food, unless it's pure sugar, okay? Because, certain things have sugar in them, but like a fruit or something like that, but they still have some protein in them. So, candy, remember candy, syrup, honey, okay? No protein, right? Pure fat, like butter, or, any of the fat things we just talked about, no protein in the fat, okay? Some things are mixed. So all these things right here, you can get protein from. And you can pretty much delete the nuts. If you don't like nuts and you just eat these, you'll have enough protein. If you don't like eggs or fish and you eat the other ones, you pretty much can get your protein from lentil soup, lentils, or nuts. It's better to mix them up, but you don't have to. Your body can break that protein down and use it to make its own proteins, okay? So a big misconception about proteins is that you have to eat meat to get proteins. And I've mentioned this in the class before, but again, I'm not pushing veganism or vegetarianism. I'm just opening up the window of discussion, okay? So the strongest man in the world, not the current one, but a few years ago, was a vegan. The woman who held the world record for planking was a vegan when she did that. But if you don't look at people, look at nature. Look at a cow, a male cow or any cow. Look at a bull, big strong bull, right? What does a bull eat? Does a bull eat meat? What does a rhinoceros eat? A hippopotamus? An elephant? Some of the strongest animals in the world, what do they eat? They don't eat meat, they eat plants. Plants have protein, and you can get all your protein from plants if you wanted to. So all of these things, all these non-meat alternatives, then you've got all this meat. Whey protein comes from milk, okay? And you got milk and other dairy products down here. Fish, chicken, different kinds of fish, steak, beef steak and beef they have the same thing. I don't know. Lamb is different, obviously. Venison is from deer, and pork is from pig. So, we got it. We understand that. It's the plant things that people don't realize that you can get so much protein from. You'd be fine. I'm going on year 4, so I'm fine. So here is a table that you're going to fill out in your notes with examples of each of these. So let's look at these. So an example of a chemical messenger are hormones and neurotransmitters. Proteins, okay? An example of a transport protein is hemoglobin. That's the stuff that makes your blood red. Hemoglobin carries iron from an oxygen, I should say. The iron is what carries the oxygen, really. It's in the hemoglobin. From your lungs, the oxygen from your lungs to the rest of your body. And then it gets recycled. So it's pretty cool. A protein does that. Keratin, and so you're seeing a little bit of a pattern here. Not up here really, but anything with in. Remember, anything with os on the end was a sugar. Well, anything with in on the end is a protein. Keratin this is a microscopic view of a strand of hair, but your nails, and there's some in your skin as well. Keratin is the main protein in your hair and nails. See, actin, myosin, more proteins. So if I ever gave you a test, hint, hint, that said, which of these is a sugar, which of these is a protein, and that kind of thing, and you had no idea, you never saw the word before in your life, but OSE was at the end, that'd be a sugar, and IN at the end would be a protein. And that's for movement in your muscles. Antibodies that attack viruses and other foreign bodies inside of you are proteins. And then you have enzymes. Enzymes are proteins as well. Anything with ACE at the end is an enzyme. Lipase, lactase, maltase. So lactase would break lactose, and maltase would break maltose, sugars, okay? They're all kind of connected, their names. So these are all examples of proteins that do jobs of functions in many different areas of the body. So like we said in the beginning of the protein slides, proteins have functions all over the animal and plant body, okay? I think we're almost done with this section of notes. Let me see, where are we? Wow, we gotta go all the way to there, huh? Okay, so we'll do this, fast. All right, so we're here on slide 53, and proteins are polymers formed by joining many amino acids. Again, dehydration synthesis. Synthesis means making. Dehydration means the water's coming out. It's removing water. The bond holding the amino acids together is called a peptide bond. And I'll show you that on the next slide, I think. 2 amino acids is called a dipeptide. Whoa! Just like two glucoses are called a disaccharide, right? More than 2 is a polypeptide. Just like more than 2 sugars is a polysaccharide. A chain composed of 100 or more is called a protein. So you've got your basic building block, the amino acid, you put them together to get a dipeptide, and then you put a bunch of those together and you get a polypeptide. And then of course, you'd have to have 100 of those puppies or more, those amino acids together to get your protein, okay? So these are the building blocks of protein, the amino acids. So this is an amino acid. This is what's called the carboxyl group. Okay, and on your notes, you have to draw and label this. carboxyl. So carboxyl, that's what that means. And that is your amino group, because amino comes from the nitrogen. That's where the amino word comes from. And then there's this R, which we'll talk about in the, I believe, the next set of notes next time, okay? So just put the names next to those two parts of the amino acid. So you've got NH2 for the amino group and COOH for the carboxyl group. Those are, and you should have to draw the diagrams as well. So these make up an amino acid. And again, the amino acids make up proteins. Now you can go to the vitamin shop, you can go to many stores like Whole Foods or whatever, maybe even Publix sells it. You can get amino acids like in a scoop that you can put in a shake and drink it while you're working out. And that'll help your body get the raw building blocks of proteins, because that's what amino acids are. And your body will use them, proteins, and then you can make muscle when you're working out. Much safer and much smarter than doing something stupid like steroids. Okay. And remember, if you miss anything because I'm going too fast, you can always go back. All right. Oh, we do talk about the R group here. Okay. So the only way that amino acids differ from each other, so you've got different amino acids, right? And they're all like different little colored pearls on the necklace, okay? Or different colored beads, each with their own function and arrangement on the protein chain, okay? So there are 20 different amino acids, but they're all arranged differently. So if I have 20 amino acids, I can make thousands of different combinations. Humans can produce 12 of them on their own. So like I said, taking those amino acids in your food, you can make 12 of them, but we have to eat the rest. So the essential amino acids will be the ones that you take that we didn't make. So, and those are called essential amino acids. So here they are. The non-essential ones are the ones that we make, and the essential ones we have to eat from eating food, from ingesting food. And these are all their names, but don't worry about them. You don't have to memorize the names of amino acids. Thank God, right? Okay. So circle the R groups and the amino acids below, and this is our last slide, so I've already circled them for you. So these are just 4 examples. And remember, so you've got your amine group, okay? You've got your carboxyl group, and this is your R group. The R group is like the thing that's changed. So all of these would be beads on the necklace, but adding these little R groups would change the color of the bead or the shape of the bead or what the bead meant or something like that, okay? And so arranging these in all different ways, you're going to make so many multitude of different proteins. And that's our notes for today.